Friedrich Nietzsche did not want to shock the world. He wanted to survive himself. If Friedrich Nietzsche had lived in silence, if his body had not been consumed by pain, if his loneliness had not been so extreme, if his mind had not lived constantly on the edge of collapse, there would be no Nietzsche philosophy to discuss today and no Nietzsche legacy to remember. This is not the story of a great philosopher. It is the story of a human being who could not live quietly. Nietzsche did not write because he had answers. He wrote because he could not endure being alone with himself. Writing was not ambition or intellectual vanity. It was psychological necessity. It was the only way Friedrich Nietzsche found to remain alive when living felt unbearable. This is not a video about philosophy explained in academic terms. This is not an intellectual lesson. This is a descent into the psychology of Friedrich Nietzsche. It is the inner portrait of a man who lived too many lives inside one fragile body and paid for it with health, love, stability, and finally with mental collapse. Before the phrase "God is dead" existed, there was something far more intimate. Nietzsche was exhausted from living. From a very young age, Friedrich Nietzsche lived with constant physical suffering. Crippling migraines destroyed his concentration. Nausea isolated him for days. Nervous crises left him unable to function. Severe vision problems slowly erased the world in front of his eyes. His body was never a neutral instrument. It was an obstacle and a prison. This experience shaped the psychology behind Nietzsche philosophy long before it shaped his ideas. When the body becomes a source of pain, the mind does not search for abstract truth. It searches for survival. Nietzsche philosophy begins here, in the body and in suffering. Loneliness for Friedrich Nietzsche was not a romantic choice. It was a sentence imposed by life. He did not belong anywhere. He did not belong to the academic world, even while teaching. He did not belong to his family structure, which felt emotionally suffocating. He did not belong in love, because when he loved, he was not loved back. When he sought community, he was rejected. When he wanted to be understood, he was ignored. Over time, this accumulation of rejection created something dangerous inside him. A mind forced to justify its own existence in order not to disappear. This is where the psychology of Nietzsche truly begins. Nietzsche spoke about strength because he felt fragile. He wrote about the will to power because he lived in a permanent sense of powerlessness. He described eternal return because his suffering repeated itself endlessly without relief. He declared the death of God because he needed to destroy any external authority that told him how he should live. Nietzsche philosophy was not born from arrogance. It was born from suffering. Friedrich Nietzsche did not want to destroy morality to provoke society. He wanted to destroy it because morality was destroying him. The moral system of his time demanded obedience, sacrifice, humility, and resignation. Nietzsche's psychological structure could not tolerate submission. Every rule felt like pressure. Every duty felt like violence. Every moral command reminded him that living cost him more than it cost others. Here something essential appears. Nietzsche did not hate humanity. He felt biologically incompatible with the world. The world demanded endurance without explanation. Nietzsche needed meaning to endure. The world rewarded conformity. Nietzsche demanded authenticity. This conflict was not philosophical. It was psychological. Nietzsche rebelled because obedience felt like suffocation. His philosophy became a survival strategy, not a doctrine, not a system, a psychological defense against collapse. If this human and psychological approach helps you think, feel, or simply feel less alone, consider subscribing to LETTERIUM. This channel is not about teaching philosophy. It is about understanding what happens when living becomes too heavy to carry. When Nietzsche wrote about the Overman, he was not proposing a political ideal or a superior race. He was imagining a version of himself capable of surviving existence without breaking. The Overman is not domination. It is resistance. It is the fantasy of a self strong enough to carry life without collapsing under its weight. The famous phrase, "God is dead," is not an attack on religion. It is a cry of abandonment. Friedrich Nietzsche lost his father very early. He grew up surrounded by women, with a protective mother and a persistent sense of fragility. For a time, God functioned psychologically as structure, order, and protection. When that structure collapsed, Nietzsche experienced it not as freedom, but as betrayal. Psychologically, Friedrich Nietzsche could not tolerate external authority. Every authority threatened his fragile inner balance. Any imposed value felt like danger. That is why Nietzsche thinking is radical. Because his need was radical. Nietzsche loneliness was not poetic. It was clinical. Years passed without meaningful human contact, without deep conversation, without stable affection. His letters reveal a man desperate to be read, desperate to be understood, desperate to be recognized, and at the same time terrified of intimacy. This contradiction, craving connection and fearing, it runs through the entire psychology of Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche needed others, but others wounded him. So he chose distance, and he paid the psychological price. Madness did not arrive suddenly. It was gradual erosion. First came isolation, then extreme self-demand, then the rupture with emotional supports, finally collapse. When Friedrich Nietzsche's mind broke in Turin, it was not an accident. It was the logical outcome of a life lived without inner rest. Nietzsche's work is secondary. Important, yes, but secondary. His books are not neutral treatises. They are symptoms. Each concept is a scar. Each aphorism is a way not to scream. Philosophy was his last refuge when he no longer had health, love, or home. And even that refuge failed. Friedrich Nietzsche spent the final years of his life without full consciousness, cared for by others, reduced to silence. The man who wanted to affirm life to its extreme ended unable to inhabit it. And this is the paradox that unsettles us. He did not win. He did not triumph. He He did not save himself, but he left something else. He left an emotional map for those who feel that living demands too much. Because Nietzsche does not speak to the strong. He speaks to the exhausted, to those who feel the world demands a version of themselves they cannot sustain, to those who carry suffering, loneliness, guilt, and painful clarity, to those who sense that madness is not always illness but excess of consciousness without shelter. That is why Friedrich Nietzsche still disturbs us, because he does not offer comfort. He offers brutal honesty, and in that honesty, many recognize themselves. This is not the story of a great philosopher. It is the story of a human being who could not live quietly. If these human psychological and uncomfortable stories resonate with you, support LETTERIUM. Here we do not glorify suffering, but we do not hide it. We listen to what remains when the noise fades.